So, dear students, today our topic is physiology of respiration. It means how the respirations can be occurs. Respiration having various steps. That is the exchange of gas between environment and lungs. From the environment, oxygen can be enter in the lungs. From the lungs, the carbon dioxide can be exist from the lungs, and as well as in the lungs, that is the exchange of the gases, that is the exchange of the oxygen with the blood. So from the lung, oxygen can be enter into the blood. From the blood, the carbon dioxide can be exist into the lungs. From the blood it can exist and enter into the lungs. Then that blood can be transported towards the heart. Then in the heart, from the heart it can enter in the systemic circulation. From the systemic circulation it can reaches to the various metabolic organs or metabolic cells. And cells, already you know, from the fat metabolisms or electron transport chain, that is a biological oxidation. Each and every step we require the oxygen for productions of ATP. If oxygen is not present in the metabolic cell, means there is no ATP that much it produces, it can bypass the etc. Okay, so due to that, the body having the deficiency of energy, then the growth will be the stopped. Okay, then maybe the necrosis of organ is occurs, or the failure of organ can be start. That was is the common in the COVID-19s. Okay, due to deficiency of oxygen, lack of saturations of the oxygen. So then were in the cell also the exchange will be taken place. Cell utilize oxygen, produces carbon dioxide. So that carbon dioxide enter into the blood. From the systemic circulation, the oxygen can enter into the metabolic cells. So every minute, every second, that process will be the continue. It means in 1 minute and average 12 to 18 time that process will be the continue, because the rate of respiration is, that is the 12 to 18 per minute. Okay, then from that metabolic cell, so that respiratory gases, that way they are reaches to the, that is the heart through a venous return. Then from the heart, once again they are enter in the lung. So this phenomena, how there will occur, that entire study was known as the physiology of respiration or mechanism of respiration. First we concentrate regarding the physiology of respirations, but in some books the both are same, physiology and mechanism. Okay, mechanism of respiration means their molecular level they can describe, but in physiology level, physiology of respiration, in physiology of respiration, they are described only in the organ level, in the overall. That is the only difference. So that's why I have separated here. First we can discuss regarding the physiology of respiration, later on we can go for the mechanism of respirations. So dear students, already you know the definitions of the respiration. It means the exchange of the oxygen and carbon dioxide, so that of with the environment, and lungs are lungs and that is the blood, or blood and cell. That is a oxygen can be taken in, carbon dioxide can be given out. So that process was known as the respirations. So here the respiration, they will be having the four phases. There is a phase one that was known as the pulmonary ventilation. Pulmonary ventilations means the entry of the air from environment to the lungs, that was known as the inhalations or inspirations, and exit of the carbon dioxide from lungs to the environment, that was known as the expiration or exhalation. Nothing but the exchange of the respiratory gases between lungs and environment, so that was known as a pulmonary ventilation. And pulmonary ventilation, that will be having the two subphases, that is the inspiration expiration, or inhalation or exhalations. That is nothing but exchange of the respiratory gases between the lungs and environment, that was known as the pulmonary ventilation. And pulmonary ventilation is the first phase of the respiration. And second one, That was known as the external respiration. That is the exchange of the respiratory gases between blood and alveoli, or air of the lungs, or air of the alveoli. There is exchange of the respiratory gases between lung and blood. So where the oxygen can enter from lungs to the blood and carbon dioxide can be exist from the blood, okay, into the lungs. So that was known as the external respiration. Next one is the next phase is the, that is the respiratory gas transport. So from the blood, so they are transported throughout the body. That is also one of the phases or physiology of the respiration. And last one, so that was known as the internal respiration. That is the exchange of the gases between blood and tissue, or between blood and metabolic cell. Okay, each and every tissue made up of the cell, and group of tissues the made up of the organs are involved in the various functions. So that's why, so what are the cell functions are there, so that all are the functions of the organ. And cell, each and every biochemical process, the cell is required the oxygen. So where the exchange will be taken place with the blood, so that was known as the internal respiration. Okay, pulmonary ventilation mean exchange between the environment and lungs. Then external respiration, blood and lungs. And internal respiration, blood and tissue. So like that, the respirations is mainly having the four phases. That is the pulmonary ventilation, external respiration, respiratory gas transport, that is also important. Then as well as the internal respirations. Okay, so nowadays in the current 2 to 5 days back from back, you can hearing some that is the mucormycosis. Okay, आपने सुना है, there is a fungal infection after the COVID treatment. The patients are suffering from the mucormycosis. Okay, so in the mucormycosis, that is the due to the fungal infection. Okay, especially dear students, so those are diabetic patient. Okay, if they are having the COVID means you can concentrate to them, so their blood sugar level should be normal. ओके, उनका ब्लड शुगर लेवल नॉर्मली रहना चाहिए. अगर आपका फैमिली मेंबर है, रिलेटिव्स है, कोई दोस्त है, कोई भी है, अगर आपको पता लगता है कि आस्क टू देम वेदर दे आर डायबिटिक्स और नॉन डायबिटिक्स, because it is more common in the diabetic patients, because it is occurs due to uncontrolled sugar level. Only simple. So in those patients or in those human beings, even in normal, if sugar level is not controlled means, then so they are suffering from the mucormycosis. In now in the last 5 days, it become the more decade disease as more than the COVID-19 or cancer. So in the mucormycosis also, the respiratory gas transport system can be failed. The gas cannot be transported due to fungal infection, fungal growth. The blood vessels can be blocked. Due to that, the transport system can be stopped. So that's why the death will be the occurs. So that's why. So whatever your family members are there, relatives are there, friend circle is there, or neighbors are there, even they may be enemy. Still, you can ask how their blood sugar level is there. You can insist the doctors. Okay, now the doctors are aware. Still, you can ask, sir, I heard like that. So whether it is the correct, they think. So this candidate was the one of the from the medical profession. Okay, so that's why we take the special precautions of that patients. Okay, so that can avoid the mucormycosis. So like that. So here the phase respiration, they mainly divided into four phases. So now we can learn one by one. So regarding the pulmonary ventilation, that is exchange of the gases between lungs and environment, or environment lungs, is known as the pulmonary ventilations. So that is the from the environment, the air, that is the respiratory gases, can enter into the lungs. So that was known as the inspiration or exhalations. So this was occurs due to change in the atmospheric pressure. So in the atmosphere, the content of oxygen is more, then it is having the more pressure. In the lungs, that carbon dioxide will be accumulated more and less oxygen is present. Okay, after that is external respiration. Okay, so where the oxygen is be enter into the blood and carbon dioxide can be deposited. Okay, so due to that, inside the lung, the pressure of oxygen is decreases, and outside the lung environment, so that pressure become the more, and the gases always transport from higher pressure to the lower pressure. So that will be happens in the inspiration. So in the environment, so whatever the oxygen content is there, that will be having the high pressure, and whatever the air in the lungs is there, so that will be having the low oxygen pressure. So then only when this environment was created between the environment and lungs, so then only the inspiration or inhalation is occurs. If it is opposite, it does not occurs. Only when in environment that oxygen pressure should be more, and in the lungs the oxygen pressure should be less, then only the inspiration or the gases can be enter from environment into the lungs. So that phenomena was known as a inspirations. So next one is the expiration or exhalations, that is the exit of the respiratory gases from lungs to the environment. If e are expired means, or expired means, or exhalation means, not only the carbon dioxide can be exist, even whatever the oxygen was left in the lung, that is also exist from the lungs. So that's why I'm using the term respiratory gases. So in the environment we having the oxygen, carbon dioxide and nitrogen freely available. These are also known, these all are known as the respiratory gases. Okay, so after inspiration, okay, then as well as the external respiration, the lungs will be having the full of carbon dioxide. Okay, then in the whatever environment is there, so where the carbon as compared to lungs, so where in the environment that carbon dioxide pressure can be decreases, so then it can allow the expirations or exhalations, that is the entry of the respiratory gas, especially the deoxygenated air, or that is the carbon dioxide from lungs to the environment, due to change in the pressure of the carbon dioxide in the lungs as well as in the environment due to pressure difference. So that was causes the entry of the air from lungs to the environment. So that process was known as the expiration or exhalations. So like that, the pulmonary ventilation, so that was subdivided into two phases, that is the inspiration and expiration. Inspiration denotes the entry of the oxygen into the lungs, and expirations or exhalation, it can denote the exit of the carbon dioxide from lungs to the environment. So like that, the exchange of the gases or that is the air or oxygen and carbon dioxide that was taken place between the environment and lungs, so that was known as the pulmonary ventilations. So next one is the external respiration, that is nothing but the exchange of the respiratory gases between the lung and blood. Okay, between lung and blood, whatever the gases was exchanged, that was known as the external respirations. Once again, here also the that the main phenomena occurs due to only pressure difference. Okay, only pressure difference. So whatever the blood, which it can vegetate to the lungs, that will be having the less oxygen pressure and more carbon dioxide pressure in the blood. But alveoli after inspiration, it having the more oxygen, that oxygen pressure and less carbon dioxide pressure. So that it can take place the pressure difference between the blood and air of the alveoli. Once again, it can allow the exchange. That is the exchange of that is the oxygen can enter into the blood, and the carbon dioxide from blood it can enter into lungs. So that was known as the external respirations. So that is the alveoli. So that is the deoxygenated blood. It can passes along with the alveoli. Okay, blood vessel, lot of capillaries. So they are surrounded by the alveoli. So those capillaries towards the lungs, so they carries the deoxygenated blood. And whatever deoxygenated blood is there, so that blood will be having the low oxygen pressure and high carbon dioxide pressure. But in alveoli, the oxygen level pressure is high and carbon dioxide pressure is low after inspiration. So that was causes pressure difference between the deoxygenate blood and alveoli, then it can causes the exchange of the respiratory gases like that. Okay, the oxygen can enter into the blood, okay, due to pressure difference between blood and alveoli, and same time the carbon dioxide can exist from the blood, or it can out from the blood enter into the alveoli, and this phenomena or process is known as a external respiration, that is the exchange of gases from blood to the alveoli, that is the oxygen enter inside the lungs, that is sorry, inside the blood vessel, and carbon dioxide enter into the alveoli from the blood, then that blood become the oxygenated blood, and it can transport towards the our respective chamber of the heart. So this phenomena was known as the external respiration, that is expiration between, that is exchange of gases between the blood and alveoli, not a environment. External means you thinking it is that is the extra environment, not environment, that is the pulmonary ventilations. Here whatever occurs between alveoli and blood vessel, so that was known as the external respiration. So next one, that was known as the respiratory gas transport. So after the blood become the oxygenated, so that that enter of the oxygen, so that can transported throughout the body, so with the help of the blood. So that phenomena was known as the respiratory gas transport. So like that, from the lungs the oxygenated blood can transport toward the tissue, and from the tissue, so that deoxygenated blood can transport it towards the lungs. So this is known as the respiratory gas transports. Okay, so dear students, so from the lungs the oxygen can be transported to the tissues, so with the help of the hemoglobin only. Okay, so 98.5% of the oxygen, so that was transported from lungs to the tissue by combining with the hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is the part of RBC. Okay, hemoglobin is the part of RBC, that's why the RBC is the main blood cell that was involved in the exchange of the gases. So that's why you should be have the normal number of RBC and normal number of the hemoglobin. You always concentrate regarding the hemoglobin, especially for girls, you always having the less hemoglobin due to physiological changes, so due to high profile life, or due to that is the diet restriction, so then we will be having the you having the less hemoglobin, then it can create the problem in the transports of oxygen, and lack of oxygen in the tissue, then ATP was not processed. Okay, oxygen cannot be transported, carbon dioxide cannot be removed, then we are suffering day by day, we are suffering from the malfunctions of the organ. So that's why you always have the healthy RBC number and healthy, that is the hemoglobin number. So here the oxygen 98.5% that was transported by combinations with the hemoglobin, and only 1.5% of the oxygen, so that was transported by dissolved in the blood or dissolved in the plasma. Okay, only 1.5%, so that was dissolved in the plasma, but 98.5% that was transported with the help of the hemoglobin. But so this 1.5% dissolved form of oxygen, so that was, it is the emergency oxygen. So during the exercise, rapidly you start to running, immediately the lungs cannot be adjust, the CNS cannot be adjust the rate of respiration. So on that time only, so this dissolved form of oxygen was helpful for save our life. It is only 1.5, but it is the most important in the conditions. That was helpful for in the case of the emergency during the rapid exercise. In the initially, we RBCs are failed to transport the fulfill the demand of the muscle. So on that time only, the dissolved form of oxygen was helpful for us. Or any conditions disorder, then also the dissolved form of oxygen was helpful for to the tissues to survive or to got the oxygen. So like that, that is the 1.5% that was transported by dissolved form, and 98.5% oxygen that can be transported with the help of the combinations with the hemoglobins. Okay, from the tissues, So that deoxygenated blood, because tissue take the oxygen and give the carbon dioxide, so that deoxygenated blood transferred toward the lungs, so with the help of the hemoglobin, that is as a carbo hemoglobin, only 13%, not more, like not like oxygen, only 13% of carbon dioxide, so that was transported with the help of hemoglobin, and 9% of carbon dioxide that was transported with the form of the dissolved form, and 78% was transported as a bicarbonate, that is HCO3, in the help of the carbonic anhydrase enzyme. So that enzyme is only found in the RBC. Okay, so that's why bicarbonate is helpful for to maintain the pH of our blood, that is 7.4. So that's why RBC play an important role, or blood play an important role to maintain the pH of our blood. Okay, so that is one of the major functions of the RBC or bicarbonate. So like that, the carbon dioxide can be returned to the lungs by dissolved form 9% with hemoglobin as a carbohemoglobin or many other proteins 13%, and as well as that is as a bicarbonate in the 78%. So this was known as the respiratory gas transport. So like that, the oxygen and carbon dioxide can be transported from one place to the another place with the help of the various compounds. So now we can learn regarding the internal respirations. So internal respirations mean exchange of the respiratory gases between blood and tissues is known as the internal respirations. So from the capillaries, the oxygenated blood reaches to the tissues, because capillaries, so they are arises around the tissue cells. Then where once again pressure difference, so that can causes exchange of the oxygen, so that of with the blood. Okay, so where from the capillaries, oxygen can enter into the tissues, and from the cell or tissues, the carbon dioxide enter into the capillaries blood. So like that, the exchange can be occurs at the tissue level once again due to pressure difference, that was known as the internal respiration. That is the respiration at the site of tissue cell or metabolic cell. So whatever the exchange was taken plus, that was known as the internal respiration. So like that, the respirations can be occurs. That is like that, the oxygen and carbon dioxide can be exchanges between the tissues, environment, lung, and as well as the blood. So now we go further regarding the mechanism of respiration. Once again, we learn first how the inspiration or inhalation is occurs. Inspiration, inhalation means breathing in. So dear students, so for inspiration, the inspiratory area, so they are play an important role in the to regulate the inspiration or expressions. Only under the guidance of inspiratory area or inspiratory center, the inspiration and inhalation is occurs, then only the air can enter from environment into the lungs. And these inspiratory area, so they are mainly present in the respiratory center. Okay, and respiratory center is mainly present in the medulla oblongata. So like that, the medulla oblongata, it was the one of the parts of the brain. It's play an important role in inspiration as well as the expression, because it consists of the respiratory center, and respiratory center mainly consists of two center. One is the inspiratory center, regulate the inspiration, and expiratory center, it can regulate the expirations. Okay, so other components, so those are involved in inspiration is the pharynx nerve and intercostal nerve. So these are the nerve. Okay, so what the information was generated in the inspiratory area, so that was carries towards the lung, our respiratory component. Okay, so those muscles they are involved in the are helpful for inspiration towards them. So these two nerve, so they are transport the informations or impulses, and those are known as the pharynx nerve and intercostal nerve. Okay, and next components of inspiration is the diaphragm and external intercostal muscle. Okay, diaphragm, it is the dome like structure present below the lungs, or it is a separate the our abdominal cavity, so that of with the thoracic cavity. Between thoracic cavity and abdominal cavity, one dome like structure is present, so that was known as the diaphragm. And contraction and relaxation of diaphragm, so that was helpful for inspiration and expressions. As it is contracted, inspiration is occurs. As diaphragm is relaxed, then expiration or exhalation is occurs. So that's why the diaphragm, it play an important role in inspiration as well as expression. And this diaphragm can got the message from the inspiratory center with the help of the pharynx nerve. Okay, so next one is the another component involved in the inspiration expression. Those are known as the external intercostal muscle. So the muscle above the ribs, dear students, those muscles, so they are present above the ribs, so those are known as the external intercostal muscle. If these muscles are contracted, means the ribs are raised, so they are away from, they are move away from the lungs, that was known as ribs raise. Okay, they are due to contractions of the muscles above the ribs. Okay, that's why the ribs can be raised away from the lungs. Okay, and these contractions of extracostal muscle, that was helpful for the inspiration, because as the ribs raise, the thoracic volume is increases. Okay, the lung volume, thoracic volume increase means the lungs can be fully dilated. Okay, due to that, whatever the pressure in the lungs is there, that was decreases. You decrease the lungs pressure, automatically the air can enter inside the lungs. That was the inspiration. And these external intercostal muscle, they are contracted by getting the information impulses from the intercostal nerve, and these intercostal nerve got the impulses from the inspiratory center. So like that, the respiratory center, pharynx nerve, intercostal nerve, diaphragm, and external intercostal muscle. So they are responsible for to cause of the inspiration or inhalations or breathing in. Okay, the phenomena or the mechanism is, so during the inspiration, so when the carbon dioxide is increased in the lungs as well as the blood, so then the cerebral cortex got the information with the help of the chemoreceptors. Okay, those send message to the cerebral cortex. So carbon dioxide increases. So oxygen level was decreases. So that message was integrated by the cerebral cortex, and integrated answer that was reaches to the medulla oblongata. And medulla oblongata, it consists of the respiratory center. It can receive that message. And respiratory center is nothing but group of the nucleus, the particular group of nucleus, those are present in the medulla oblongata, they are involved in the unique function. So these group of nuclei, those present in medulla oblongata, so they involved in the regulations of respiration. So that's why, so those are known as the respiratory center. And this respiratory center, during the increase the carbon dioxide in the blood, then so this respiratory center, when they got the answer from the cerebral cortex, it can activate the inspiratory center. Okay, then inspiratory center, it can discharge the impulses, okay, in the form of the answer. They can discharge the impulses, so that impulses carried towards the diaphragm and in external intercostal muscle by a pharynx nerve or intercostal nerve. Pharynx nerve inverted to the diaphragm, that can send message from inspiratory center to the diaphragm. The intercostal muscle, nerve, they are inverted in the external intercostal muscle. They carries the impulses, that is the information from inspiratory center to the extracostal muscle. Then the diaphragm, when got the message from the inspiratory center with the help of pharynx nerve, and external intercostal muscle, when they got the message from the inspiratory center with the help of intercostal nerve, then the both are involved in the contraction. The diaphragm can be contracted. Due to contractions of diaphragm, the chest volume is increases. Then contractions of external intercostal muscle, the ribs are raised. So due to contractions of diaphragm and contractions of the muscles above the ribs, that is the external intercostal muscle, the thoracic volume is increases, and the lungs are more expand. So as the lungs was more expand, the pressure in the pleural area, that was decreases about 758 mmHg. The pleural cavity is nothing but the lungs having the two layer, the visceral layer and parietal layer. between visceral and parietal layer some cavity is there, so that cavity was known as the pleural cavity, and it can filled with the certain fluid, so that fluid is known as the pleural fluid, and that fluid is also having some pressure, so that pressure was known as the pleural pressure. So that pleural pressure is also reflects on the inspiration and as well as the expiration. So during the increase the thoracic volume, automatically the lungs is expanded. Okay, as the lungs was expanded, automatically the area of the pleural cavity was increases. So increase the pleural cavity area and lungs, the pleural pressure is decreases about only 758 mmSg. Then it can allow the inspiration, because our environment, it will be having the atmospheric pressure about 760 mmSg. Okay, our environment having the osmotic pressure, there is 760 mmSe, and it causes the pressure difference between environment and lungs. So environment having high pressure, that is 760 mmSe, and our lungs having the low, that is as compared to environment, that is 758 mmSe. So due to that, the air containing oxygen, so that can enter from environment into the lungs, then the inspiration is occurs. So like that, the inspiration can be occurs with the help of the these component. Only the pressure difference between the lungs, that is in the pleural pressure, and as well as the atmospheric pressure. And atmospheric pressure is a 760 mmSg. So next one, so regarding the expiration or exhalation or also breathing out. So it is also regulated by the medulla oblongata due to presence of respiratory center. Okay. Then as well as diaphragm was involved, and here the internal intercostal muscles are involved. So these are three component. One is the respiratory center, then diaphragm and internal intercostal muscle. Internal intercostal muscle means the muscles between the two ribs. The muscles between the two ribs, those are known as the internal intercostal muscles. So as the internal intercostal muscles contracted, the ribs are come closer together. Due to that, the lung volume was decreases. A pressure on the lungs is increases due to decrease the size of the thoracic cavity by causing of the internal intercostal muscle. Then that was allow the expirations. So regarding the mechanism, so when the carbon dioxide is more in the blood, then also the chemoreceptors send information cerebral cortex. Then the cerebral cortex integrate the message and give the answer to the medulla oblongata. And medulla oblongata, it can read the message with the help of the respiratory center. Then the respiratory center, in the case of when the plasma having the high oxygen level, okay, so on that time it can inhibit the inspiratory area and activate the expiratory area. Okay, so from the expiratory area, as they are excited, the pharynx nerve stop to discharge the impulses to the diaphragm. So lack of impulses from pharynx nerve, the diaphragm was relaxed. And expiratory area, so with the help of the intercostal nerve, it can send the message to the internal intercostal muscle, and then the diaphragm was relaxed, and internal intercostal muscles are contracted. So due to contractions of the internal intercostal muscle and relaxation of diaphragm, the thoracic volume is decreases. Then lungs can be more, its size was decreases due to decrease the thoracic volume. As the thoracic volume is decreases, the pressure on the lungs is increases. Due to that, the pleural pressure is increases about just 762 mmSg, and our atmospheric pressure is 760 mmSg. Once again, the pressure difference is occurs, then it can causes the, that is the expiration from the lungs. The air can enter towards the lungs due to pressure difference. So this is the mechanism regarding the inspiration and as well as the expirations. So next one, same process we can go for the step by step. In the step 1, the exchange of respiratory gases occurs between the blood and lungs, because water the blood, it can agitate to the lungs. That blood will be having the oxygen pressure is 40 mmSg, and carbon dioxide pressure is the about 45 mmSg, and whatever the air after inspiration the in the alveoli that having the oxygen pressure is 109 mmSg and carbon dioxide pressure is only 40 mmSg. So this can cause the pressure difference. Okay, so that's why the carbon dioxide, okay, enter into the lungs from the blood, and oxygen enter into the blood from alveoli due to pressure difference. Okay, next one, that is the transport of the oxygenated blood from lungs to the heart. So after oxygenation process, so that oxygenated blood can transport it towards the heart. So with the help of the hemoglobin or with the help of the blood or pulmonary veins. Okay, so next one, so that oxygenated blood from the heart enter in the systemic circulation and reaches to the metabolic cell. That is the step 3 is exchange of oxygenated blood between the blood and metabolic cell. So what the blood visited to the metabolic cell, that will be having the high oxygen pressure, that is the 108 mmSg, and carbon dioxide is only 40 mmSg, and whatever the cell having the oxygen level is only 40 mmSg and carbon dioxide level is 45 mmSg. Once again it can cause the pressure difference. So due to that the exchange can be occurs, oxygen can enter into the cell and carbon dioxide can be exist from the cell. So like that the internal respirations can be occur due to pressure difference between the oxygen and carbon dioxide. So next, from here this deoxygenated blood reaches to the heart. From the heart it can reaches to the alveoli. So like that the inspiration and expiration, external inspiration, internal inspiration occur due to pressure difference between environment and alveoli, and as well as the oxygen pressure, the partial pressure difference between the blood and alveoli and metabolic cell and blood. So like that, so this pressure difference only that was responsible to cause of the inspiration, expiration, external inspiration, internal inspiration. So this was the physiology as well as the mechanism of the respiration. So in the next class we can discuss regarding the regulations of the respirations. So various components, so they are useful for